Hello, thank you for stopping by. My name is Becky and this is BecxReadz, and today I want to have a discussion with you about romance and smut. This is a topic that I've been thinking about a lot lately. I've been talking with different people on Bookstagram about it. I've been hearing other opinions. I have been reading romance for well over a decade. My God, it's becoming close to 2 decades now. Jesus, I'm getting old. And I've gone through the entire gamut of the romance spectrum, from YA romance to Christian romance. Hell, I've read Amish romances, I've delved into your standard and then your erotica, and anything in between. And at different points in my life, I've been able to read and really enjoy every avenue that romance has to offer. So let's first talk about how I classify smut. I know some people are becoming numb to that and they don't really like that word, and let me tell you, I had the hardest time coming around to the term smut. I thought it was such a stupid word. I really did. And I really only heard it in the context of Booktube. It wasn't until about 2018, I think, where I started hearing this word smut, and I was like, why are you saying that? Just say sexual content. That's what it is. But as I started watching Booktube and I started learning about like the algorithm and things like that and the censorship that goes on with certain words, I started thinking that maybe people were using smut to get around the algorithm censorship gods in place of saying sexual content. Because as we know on YouTube, there are just some words that YouTube doesn't like you to say in videos. And as smut started becoming more of this topic of conversation, I realized that it actually has a definition. For the longest time, I thought it was an acronym. I saw it somewhere, somebody shared a meme or something, and it was SMUT. Sexual material unintended for teenagers. That is what I thought smut stood for the longest time. When I looked up the definition of smut, 3 things came up, and I'm going to focus on the third one that pertains to books and writing in general. Obscene or lascivious talk, writing, or pictures. It comes from the German schmutzen, which means defile, corrupt, or make obscene. I thought it was a slang word or an acronym. And I find it funny that it comes from schmutzen, because that makes sense, because if you ever hear like somebody say you have some schmutz on your face or something like that, it's like dirt. It's filth. Anywho, there's a grammatical lesson for you that I as well learned. When it comes to smut, I have a spectrum as well that I think of when I think of smut. I think of innocent, which lots of people will say clean romance. That means there's no sexual content at all in the book. At all. There might be some kissing, but there's no sexual content in it at all. And then you go to closed door, which there might be allusions to sexual content coming up. There might be some foreplay. There might be some heavy petting. But once you get to the actual sex scenes, it's fade to black, closed door, and then you move on with the story. Then you have your standard smut, which is pretty much just your regular romance. They might have 1 or 2 sex scenes in them. They're nothing too obscene or graphic or anything like that. Then there is your spicy smut, which this gets into the books that have maybe 2+ sex scenes in them. They use words like cock, dick, pussy, things like that, that are a little bit more vulgar in terms. And then you get to erotica, which is a vast majority vulgar sex scenes. The smut makes up the majority of the book. So that is my spectrum of how I classify smut. And when I review books, I do have a smut scale. It's based on chili peppers. I go 1 through 4. I will link a video down below where I explain my rating system, and I put that in there just so people can see like what to expect, because I know some people want to read a romance, but they don't want a heavy smut romance. So that is why I include it in my reviews. But I do also include in my reviews a chemistry scale, because I can read high smut books that lack chemistry. I can also read low smut books that have high chemistry. So I like to put that in there so people know, hey, this is the amount of smut that's in the book, but this is how I personally feel about the chemistry of the book. So now that I've explained my smut spectrum, let's talk about the romance spectrum, in my opinion. So typically in the bookish world, romance is broken up by young adult, new adult, and adult. Those are the age spectrums. I don't really love the new adult classification because I feel like any character 18 and up is an adult, And in that 18 to 25 range where new adult is sitting, I feel like that should be classified as young adult. Because you're an adult, you're just a young adult. I personally think anybody below the age of 18 is not an adult. They are a teenager. So I feel like, in my personal opinion, anyone under 18 should be a teen, and then it should go to young adult, 18 to 25, and then adult, 25 and up. I honestly think you could even get rid of the whole young adult, new adult category and just make it all adult, because you're an adult. However, I do understand that people 18 to 25 have a different level of experience when it comes to sexual content, sexual maturity, relationship maturity than people 25 and older. So for the sake of this video, I'm going to use young adult, new adult, and adult because that is what the bookish world has as classifications. Just know that I don't agree with that spectrum. So believe it or not, if you exclusively read young adult romances, you are a romance reader, because young adult romance is romance. And I feel like this is something that if you say you read young adult romance, a lot of people in the romance sphere will not agree with you and be like, that's not real romance. It is. It's real romance. Whether it's young adult or adult, if it's a romance, you're a romance reader, and don't let anybody ever tell you that you're not. So should there be smut in YA stories? Based on the definition I gave you of obscene or lascivious talk or writing, I would have to personally say no. Based on the acronym that I thought SMUT stood for the longest time, sexual material unintended for teenagers, I would have to say no. Smut should not be in a book marketed to anybody under 18 years old. However, should there be any sexual material in YA romances? And I say yes, there should be. Because you can have sexual content without it being vulgar and explicit. And believe it or not, despite what many people want people to believe, teenagers be having sex. You can read a YA romance with a sex scene in it that is fade to black, that is closed door, that doesn't have the terminology that is in an erotic novel, and still show that these teens are having sex and experiencing sex. Because that is a real life thing that teenagers need to understand. So I feel like sexual material needs to be in YA romances. Does it need to be in all of them? Absolutely not. Because much like that spectrum I was talking about, there needs to show teens romances where you're just kissing and you're experiencing that first puppy love, and without going into the physical aspect of that relationship. Teens need to see that. But they also need to see that especially if you're 17, 18, hell, even 16, and you've been dating somebody for a while, it's completely natural to want to have that physical intimacy with somebody. And I think the people out there who want to ban certain YA books because they have one smut scene in them that's not even very graphic are delusional. That's normal. Even though you might not be experiencing this intensely erotic, unrealistic sexual experience, those feelings and some of the aspects within that sexual situation are real. People do experience them. So I feel like to blanket statement and say this is fiction, it's not going to impact people's real life, is an understatement, because you're dealing with real emotion even if they are fictional characters. So that being said, let me move on to the adult spectrum of romance and smut. So lately I've heard mentioned that if a story has slow burn or low steam or no steam, then it's a YA. They feel like it's a YA. And hey, you can have that opinion. If that's your opinion, you have it. I just think you're wrong. I personally classify an adult romance as any romance that has a character 18 or older that is out of high school. Now, if they're 18 and still in high school, then yes, I consider that a YA romance. That is my threshold for what an adult romance is. It's the age of the characters. It's not the smut level of a book. And to people who think that low spice and no spice and slow burn are YA, I feel like that is very dismissive to adult readers who are looking for different things in their romances. Because once again, romance is a spectrum, because some romance readers out there want to see themselves represented in a romance and an adult romance without the smut involved. And so to say that a book that doesn't have any spice at all is a YA, it does a disservice to the adult readers who want to see themselves depicted in an adult romance. I want you to look at the people that you know in real life. Look at their relationships. Do you want to be privy to all the kinky details of their relationships, or do you just want to see them in their sweet moments of tender touches and longing looks and companionship and being witness to those moments that are outside the bedroom? Now take that and put that into a book perspective. Do you have to see all of the sexual content to make it an adult romance? You don't. And there are some people out there who are asexual who don't even have sexual feelings, but they are still in relationships because they want that connection, they want that camaraderie, they want that companionship, but they just don't have sexual feelings. So if those people want to see themselves represented in an adult book that has no sexual content at all, and you tell them that's a YA romance, that is just so rude and so dismissive of them as a person with that experience. And that's what's great about the romance genre, is that there are books for every person who wants to find them. But to diminish what a romance is just because you are into the super kinky and not the super innocent, and to say, oh, that's a YA, is so dismissive. Think about the people who want to see themselves represented, because isn't that what we're always saying in romance and in books in general, is representation matters? And if those people aren't represented and can't see themselves in an adult romance, then that's just a backstep in what we've been saying, is that people need to be represented. And when you move from completely innocent, no smut, to maybe closed door or even standard, there's also going to be the people who are adults who experience that first sexual encounter later in life. Some people are late bloomers. Not everybody has their first sexual experience when they're 16, 17, 18 years old. So they should be able to read an adult romance that is considered an adult romance and see that people have those cute, sweet first times, because those can happen, but they also need to be able to see those awkward first times, because the majority of the time, the first time you have sex with somebody, it's going to be awkward. Even if it's sweet and tender and everything goes according to plan, it's still going to be an awkward thing. So I think readers and writers need to have that sort of spectrum as well within closed door standard romances. And then if you move into the spicier and the erotic of the spectrum, people need to be able to see different kinks explored, because people do have kinks that they want to see explored. And sometimes you can find that you have new kinks through reading. You might read something and be like, I didn't even know that was possible. Let me try that out. They also need to see things like pregnancy sex, because hey, that's a real thing. And there should exist those taboo and really weird and dark, spicy and erotic stories for people to take in, because sometimes some readers aren't here for the slow buildup of the relationship development that is romantic, and they just want to see the weird dick of an alien getting it on with a human. Readers need to experience the slow burn and the fast burn. They need to experience people who meet in a bar and then get it on that first night and then continue to get it on. And there's some people who are in relationships who take 4, 5, 6 months before they get to that first sexual experience. There's also people who are in long distance relationships who the most that they can have is maybe phone sex or video sex, and that needs to be shown in romances as well, because even though they're fictional, those things are real. There needs to be a good balance between the feeling and the fucking. You need to have stories that delve into more than just the physical aspects of a relationship. But you also need those stories that the physical relationship is all there is, because let me tell you, sometimes in reality, some people be in relationships where the fucking is what's holding them together. Let me be real. People need to see the spectrum of what romance and smut has to offer. Even though there is a spectrum to romance, it seems like a lot of the books lately you're just getting the spicy erotic end of it instead of the innocent and standard end of it. Writers, you don't have to write every one of your male characters to be a dirty talker and have some weird kink. He can be your standard dander Joe who just likes missionary, maybe up against the wall every once in a while, you know? You don't need to write all of your female characters to take all 12 inches. Unless you're writing a fantasy or a alien romance where he magically does something to her innards to make it fit. You don't need your standard average contemporary romance with your guy having a 10-inch plus dick, okay? You don't. You also don't need to write your books to have those throwaway one-liners that people can put in a TikTok to lure people in. Now, am I going to say that those often don't lure me in? No, because they do, okay? I see them and I see the words good girl and I'm just like a slobbering mess. I'm like Pavlov's dog over here, okay? Good girl just rings my bell. You need to step away from what is super popular to throw in something that's unique. And when low spice focusing on the romance is what is considered unique nowadays, that's crazy. That's crazy to me. And I feel like that could bring more people to that specific book because it is a standout amongst everything that is so saturated. Just to sum up, no matter what kind of romance you read, if you are an exclusive YA romance reader, if you exclusively read innocent, Christian, Amish, historical romances, you are a romance reader. If you read about a tornado banging a woman, you're a romance reader. If you read those super slow burns where it takes till the last chapter of a book for the characters to experience any sort of sexual connection, you are a romance reader. If you only read 5 romance books in a year, you're a romance reader. If you read 500 books in a year and they're all romance, you're a super romance reader. But you're a romance reader no matter what kind of romance you read. And you should be able to find the kind of romance that you want to read. And they are out there. You might have to dig a little bit to find them. You might have to do some very specific searching to find the kind of romances you want to read. But they are out there. But I want to wrap up this video by giving you 4 recommendations that depict my romance taste. These are all books that I've given 6 stars to this year, and they are all romance. Despite what some people might think, they are all romance. So first up, we're going to talk about the spicy romances that I gave 6 stars to. Both of them are by Anna Wong. I gave Twisted Love and Twisted Game 6 stars. This is what I would classify as adult, spicy, contemporary romances. These include 3 or more sex scenes in them, and they are explicit sex scenes. There are words like cock and dick and pussy and fuck me and good girl and crawl to me. It has all that in it. So if you don't like that sort of content, you might not like these books. However, they do have a good balance of the romance as well. There is romance and relationship developments, and you are seeing the characters outside of sexual situations developing their relationship. Now, on the standard side of romance, I am going to say The Teeth and the Tide by Rebecca F. Kenney. This is a fantasy romance. Has, I believe, maybe 2 sex scenes in it, and they are pretty standard sex scenes. They're open door, they're not very detailed, they're not very long, and the majority of this book is centered around not even the main romance where these sexual situations take place. Even though the sexual situations are in here, they are not the main focus of the book. They aren't even things that push the plot forward. They're just in there to show the relationship development between 2 certain characters. And then what I would classify as an innocent fantasy romance is The Hanging City by Charlie Ann Holmberg. There is some kissing, there's some maybe like touching of bodies within this. The main focus of this book is the buildup of the relationship and how the relationships between characters impact the plot of the story. It's a heartwarming and lovely and slow burn buildup, which I absolutely loved. And to be quite honest, most of the books that I rate extremely highly, they do tend to fall in this category of your standard to low spice. I do find the occasional high spice to erotic story that I absolutely love, but the majority tend to be on this spectrum just because I am a true romance reader and I like to see the romantic relationships develop, and I like to see that slow buildup, that connection, the touches and the smiles and the pining for one another over just the straight up, let's have sex, let's get kinky with it type of thing. So even though all of these books got 6 stars for me, they're on totally different levels of the romance spectrum. So those are my thoughts, opinions, feelings on romance and smut and how I visualize romance and smut on spectrums. Let me know down below your opinions on this. But if you've made it this far in the video and don't have anything to comment but want to let me know that you have been here, could you just leave me a heart emoji? And until my next video, thank you so much for watching, and go out there and read a romance book for me. Any romance that you want. Bye!